I am going to show Storyflow, editor and pipeline. The editor is currently an HTML script. It's on my website, but I will once I get it fixed, I will make it downloadable so that you can run it locally. Pipeline is a JavaScript running in DrawThings. So what are we doing? I have this very colorful project, which is controlling the DrawThings script through a series of instructions. And each instruction is a drag and drop block item. So this is pretty flexible. I don't have any clue how flexible because I've only just added a lot of features, basically things that I know how to code inside the DrawThings API for JavaScript inside the scripting. So it started off as a simple workflow to do a text to image and then image to video. And I wanted to be able to, add several prompts in a row. And then that grew into manipulating the pictures on the mood board, changing the canvas and the configurations, and just basically in instructions of one after the other, loading images, saving images. And what it's doing now is creating a series of reference images for a pretend comic. Alright, so you get the idea of what this is. And I will go through a little more in detail. And each time you click one of these, you get a new item, and this item is drag droppable, right? And it can delete. A note is just for your own use. It does export, but pipeline does not read anything. A new prompt will generate. So every prompt is a new generation, and preview keeps track of how many generations you are doing. Now we can name the project, save it, start a new project, load an old project, and then we can export to a text file that's just the instructions. And we can export to the clipboard, which we did right at the beginning. Down in the preview, we have basically it's the whole list again, but some of this prompt is expanding from trigger words. So let's go up and look at that real quick. So in a prompt trigger, a trigger is something that needs to be repeated again and again and again, like the location, the main character's description, the style that you're currently rendering in. And what I've discovered is that with using reference images, I'm doing a face close-up, I'm doing more of a body shot, which is seeing rendered here, and then a third image, which is kind of a mid shot, which should be around the waist up. And I can't really control this too carefully without sitting there monitoring it. But what I've realized is that I need separate descriptions for the main character when he's a close-up and it's just his face or chest and face, and another separate description for when it's his lower body. Otherwise, any mention of the lower body will mess up a close-up. Now, also within these prompts, I am using wildcards. And currently, wildcards are dollar signs. What happens in Europe? And anywhere that doesn't use a dollar sign? I don't actually know. I'm sorry. Gemini suggested this, and it is the next key on my keyboard to give me feedback. And I'll try to update this. So what I wanted to do was create some variations in the background description. So that was pretty obvious, and I just separate all of these wildcards with a vertical pipe that is very hard to type on iOS. Again, this is a work in progress, so I apologize, but I don't apologize, because that's what it is. These descriptions came from, I think, Quen3, and so, AI, prompting for AI is pretty mediocre, so I went through and broke it up, made it shorter, and actually split it into a before and after. So I have a second half here, and it's just so that I can kind of randomize the place description, how the main character is interacting with the place description, some camera descriptions. Don't take any of this as gospel. I'm very much experimenting. Poses I was doing, and again, this would mention like his lower legs or that he's kneeling on the ground, and then that would mess up any option of close-up. So I ended up splitting poses into poses that are the full body or the lower half of the body, expressions which are his head, not just his face, but looking around, turning his head, tilting, cocking his head, and later gestures, which are his shoulders, his arms, his upper body. And that roughly corresponds with the face close-up, the full body shot, and this medium shot that you're looking at now. And now we're moving into the actual rendering. Talking about here. We have finally completed our 3 reference images. We're at this point. We've cleared the canvas, which set the mood board weight to 1 of the images as is full. Oh, here, this one. 0, which is the face close-up. I've reset Quinn Edit's configuration size. And we're rendering with prompts. This first one had a title included. And the rest, I'm flipping through my different reference images, which are his close-up, medium shot, long shot, and just prompting randomly. And there's some variety in how these are constructed. You can see some are a little longer than others, and I'm rearranging everything from the style to the camera to almost always rendering mentioning the background first and then mentioning him. Otherwise it will be him in the center every time. And of course this corresponds with mood board images. And that just built out, and I just kept going, and I 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 kept going. So there's no secret to this. This is just basically just, get started and just kind of keep going and see where it goes. Now, the other thing that you need to know are these config shortcuts. This is the full configuration just out of DrawThings. I think I actually used one of my scripts to extract the configuration. That's why it's kind of easy to edit. It's all in alphabetical order. It's not about that other script, so I will stop talking about that. But basically, within a config panel, I can use just a shortcut, a single shortcut, and it will expand into this full config, or whatever I put into this value here. Or I can use the same config node or item or block, whatever you want to say, and just do a partial config, which is the parameter and the value, and I can do multiple with comma separated list. So once you have this in mind, you can easily set up projects that step through model changes, LoRa changes, render configuration changes. Just add another config. And then put in the change that you want to see and render. And if you want to lock the seed, of course, that's a config. Yeah, I don't know what seed numbers are. Okay, but anyway, now we've just locked the seed for any of these prompts. So the reason it's called Storyflow is that these instructions flow from top to bottom. So once I set this mood board weight, it stays that way through these prompts. I set these mood board weights, it stays that way through these prompts. Where I set this config, all of these prompts will be set to whatever parameter I locked in right here. I hope that makes sense. All right, let's go through some of these. Okay, so note, that's obvious. It's just whatever you want to type in. A prompt that renders the config. I just explained. Sets the config. Frames, did I explain this one already? And we have a running total. And it counts up the seconds for you, roughly. There's some algebraic math involved that I don't necessarily get correctly. Face zoom will use DrawThings built-in face detection. It's not very good at detecting faces that are animation, but it does detect photoreal and 3D shaded. And it will do an algorithm to just zoom in on it. It doesn't crop it. You actually have to add the crop. And that can be moved to the mood board, for instance, and used as a reference for your next shot. Or after a face zoom, you may want to reprompt and do an image-to-image upscaling. And I included some basic image-to-image tools and the mask, blur, and offset. I'm going a little out of order, so let me shut up. Some of these you can just explore. Ask Zoom uses one of the interrogator models. You just type in something that it can find, like for instance in our comic over here we could say find the cigar, and it will zoom in on his cigar. And again, it doesn't crop, it doesn't do anything else. It leaves that open for you to decide if you're going to crop it or if you are going to, copy that to the mood board. I don't know. Moving on, we have remove background, and that's basically like OS 10 preview, where it removes the background automatically and you're left with the checkerboard. Down here we can clear the canvas, we can save the image on the canvas, and everything needs to go into the pictures folder and come from the pictures directory. But you can add subdirectories. Move and scale, we have some more of these raw parameters. I apologize, I will try to make these more foolproof. And this is an absolute position, so It's not actually moving, it's setting an X position and a Y position. And then the scale is actually the zoom parameter. So 1 normalized to 1. 1 is 100%. Adapt size. This is for whenever you bring in a large image with load canvas, and you can set the max and then do something with an edit model. Like, for instance, finding the background, now into the mask tools, masking the foreground. We also have the body masks. This is another kind of touchy one. You have 4 options: the upper body, the lower body, the clothing, and the neck, and then some extra padding. This is straight out of the DrawThings API. So some of these I just translated straight into what DrawThings already does. Some of these are my own constructions to try to make life a little easier. Now down on the 3rd row we have all of the mood board tools: clear mood board, canvas to mood board, add mood board from the pictures folder. We can remove in a mood board at a specific index, and you've seen the weights control. This goes all the way up to mood board index 11, so you can have 12 mood board images and control them through this interface. I don't know how easy that's going to be, but I don't know. I'm adding functions and we'll see what ends up happening, what ends up working for you. Ask mask is that same ask zoom idea. You just tell it what to zoom in on. And it's going to try to find that. The ask mask will create a rectangle mask. It's not always accurate. And add that to the mask layer. So we can show the mask by copying it to the mood board. Copying it to the canvas, and from there you can export it or paint on it or whatever you need to do. We can also load a mask and clear the mask. So the way that everything works is, like I said, this is a flow. So once I set the mask, like this sets the clothes true, all of these are going to be using that same mask even when the new pictures come out. So you will eventually want to clear the mask so it won't be applying. If the mask is there, it will apply. Now we have some depth tools, and depth is the one layer that you can actually pull things out of. So I have an extract depth map, canvas to depth, and depth to canvas. So you can do a full round robin. I don't know what that's good for. Because, I remember, because for Quinn Edit, it can read a depth map, but not from the depth layer. So you would want to move it maybe to the board. We have the in-paint tools. I think I showed you that. These are just the raw config parameters. Excel Magic is 3 parameters. Keep each of these between 1 and 8. And it will improve Excel renders between 1 and 8. 1 is low detail, 8 is high detail, and the spread like this is usually pretty good. If you bring up to higher numbers, the details will increase, and it's like using one of those detailer Laura's, but it's amazing because you're actually doing it with the engine itself. Yeah, that's my invention. Then we have the negative prompt, and again, this is persistent. So this will be add one of those long generic negative prompts to the beginning of your flow, and it will be applying to all of them. JSON pose is a shortcut. So what do you put in here? When you go to control, pose, it will automatically create a pose from the image on the canvas. Go into the mini menu and save, copy, and that's what this is. So what I want you to see, it looks like the matrix. It's just a big, this is all of these coordinates in screen resolution. So the height and the width have to match your render resolution. That's how pose works. And of course you can just name it. Now here's a little thing with these shortcuts. You can't do one name and then use a bar. So like I can't do this. I can't do standing and then standing mid because it will unpack as standing every time and then you'll have part of the mid. Okay, so this would need to have its own suffix. They can't be exactly the same or they will unpack incorrectly. Right? Alright, but now down here in the JSON pose slot, we can just use that shortcut. I don't actually use poses in my workflow, so if you do this and you see some benefit from this, I would love to hear how that works out for you. I could see how that would really work, but it does need a lot of prep work because all of your poses need to be the exact size of your resolution. So if you have a project where you understand what's going to happen, like this one, you could manipulate your poses exactly and you can, you know, I don't know if you've ever worked with the pose layer, but you can move these around and we can zoom these. So you could have some more control here through poses, but I don't really do that, so I don't know. Let me know how that works. Moving on, pipeline allows me to add an export. So let me explain that really quickly. Like in the project that I showed you, I had a preliminary setup where it creates my reference images and then it goes into the main flow. So what I should do is split this project into two parts so that I have a prep section and I would export that separately. And then I have the flow section. So when I have like reference images that I like, if I like the way his beard worked out or his body worked out or his knife actually has the strap holding it and it's not just magnetically stuck to his leg. I can not do the early part that builds his reference images. I could just continue with the flow and I could just keep making my random images or my story images or however that works. But if I wanted, then later I could add one of my earlier exports. So for instance, if I have that whole prep sequence as its own pipeline, I could add it here. Oh, and then drag it up to the top so that it happens here. And I hope that makes sense. Now the loop take some explanation, and it's basically the way to batch load. Since the instructions are sent through copy-paste into DrawThings, everything needs to be in a format that the DrawThings processing instruction flow can understand. So the loop lets it know how many times you want it to loop. And don't pay too much attention to the start date, but I could say it to start counting at 1000. This will only affect the saved images. When I save within a loop using the iterative save, it will save dude 1001, 1002, 1003, and it will sequentially save these to the same folder if you supply a folder. Okay, now likewise, the load image from a folder, this time you don't supply it a name, it's going to get every image that's in a folder, create an array, and just load them one at a time every time this loop passes over this node. So these iterative nodes, there's one more, which is the mood board, and it works in the same way. It loads the mood board from the folder. So for instance, if I had a lot of costumes and one face, I could have the face in the mood board and load his costumes one at a time to the mood board. But during this loop, I would want to get rid of the new item on the mood board. I don't want to just keep adding and adding and adding. So I would remove that added picture. And I would have the initial mood board that was his face outside the loop. Does that make sense? So here's the start. I'm adding his face from a folder, and I start a loop, and now I'm looping and deleting additional photos on the mood board and whatever my prompt is. Okay, so we can automate and batch load somewhat. Some of these instructions make sense within a loop. There's a little bit of a limitation within the loop in that this is no longer dynamic. That you should have a play around and see what happens. I think that's my whole tour. I hope you have fun. The Storyflow interface will probably update, but honestly, I do like this interface. And I don't remember if I showed you the load screen. I don't think I did, so I think I will just do that again here at the end really quickly. Storyflow pipeline. I think we'll launch it, and then we'll go ahead and just redo this project. Export to clipboard. It is expanding our trigger words and our config shortcuts and our what are they, wildcards. It's expanding the wildcards randomly, and now I'm just going to paste. That's the only thing that we can do. That's the only input. And we're going to do a pre-flight check, assuming the editor has exported everything correctly and our pipeline and editor are the same versions. We should see a green check mark, which is the pre-flight check is passing. We also get to see how many renders we're going to do. I don't know, but that's right. Now, the other thing that will happen is under the models, it will let you know if all of the models are local on your device. If they're not, these will turn gold, and you just either need to go download them and put them on your device, or hopefully you are using a cloud server or an offline server that does have those models but can't be detected through this plugin. The last little item is the files for save and load. This collects any file paths, and you have to manually check this. This is mostly for people who want to share projects and share just the instructions, which are the non-dynamic saved exports. Pipeline pre-flight check will let you know if you need to download these models and if you need to create any folders, but it won't do them for you. You'll have to do it yourself. And then we just start the pipeline, and everything in our instructions will just handle automatically. Hopefully nothing goes wrong. Okay, starting off with our very doofy Excel render. It managed to put the cigar in his mouth, but of course it doesn't really know how cigars work. What a pretty face. I hope it copies that into Quinn Edit. I think that's all you get to see, and I'm gonna see if I can get away with just putting this up online and dealing with it. Here comes our Quinn Edit version of that. Come on. Come on. There you go. See, it fixed his cigar. It added the rope. And it turned him into a drawing. Okay, I hope that you get started with Storyflow. I hope that it does not drive you crazy. I hope it doesn't crash. And I hope that you check back in to see how it progresses. That's all I got time for. Good luck. And happy rendering. I'll see you next time. Bye.